In the deep hush before dawn, a city stirs. Sunlight traces the worn stones of grand halls and empty plazas, places where leaders once stood tall. Now, a quieter world listens, uncertain. Why do we stop believing in leaders? Not all at once, but slowly, like a photograph, fading in the sun. 1 year, a leader stands before a cheering crowd. 5 years later, the same words fall flat. No coup, no collapse, just a slow hollowing out of something essential: public trust. This collapse follows a pattern, seen from ancient empires to modern democracies. Every society, no matter how powerful, has grappled with these invisible fractures. Tonight we'll trace the journey that transforms hope into doubt, and power into isolation. From Versailles to modern governments, the erosion of trust is both ancient and familiar. Promises made, then broken. Distance that grows. Small corruptions that become routine. And, finally, a deficit of truth. This is not just the story of leaders, but of the people who watch, wait, and ultimately, turn away. Promises are the currency of leadership. They are the invisible contracts that bind leaders to the people, the foundation upon which trust is built and societies are shaped. Throughout history, the words of those in power have carried the weight of hope, expectation, and sometimes, desperation. Every campaign begins with a vision, a future that seems within reach. Leaders paint pictures of prosperity, unity, and progress, inviting people to believe in a better tomorrow. These visions ignite passion and inspire collective action, fueling movements and revolutions alike. But promises, like seeds, require tending. Left untended, even the boldest vision withers. Without care, attention, and follow-through, the seeds of hope planted by leaders can quickly become lost in the weeds of neglect and disappointment. When leaders fail to nurture their promises, doubt begins to take root. People start to question not just the promise, but the intent behind it. Was it ever meant to be kept, or was it simply a tool to gain power? The rulers of France spoke of unity and prosperity, but as decades passed, the gap between words and reality widened. The grandeur of Versailles stood in stark contrast to the struggles of ordinary people, highlighting the growing disconnect. Taxes rose, bread became scarce, and the monarchy's assurances rang hollow. The daily hardships faced by the people made the promises from the palace seem more like cruel jokes than genuine commitments. The disconnect grew not from a single betrayal, but from countless, small denials. Each ignored plea, each dismissed concern, added another layer to the wall, separating rulers from the ruled. Each failed promise chipped away at trust. Over time, the foundation that once seemed unbreakable began to crumble, as faith in leadership eroded bit by bit. In Versailles, the monarchy mistook patience for loyalty, while faith in the villages quietly evaporated. The silence of the people was not acceptance, but a warning sign of deeper unrest. A promise ignored is more corrosive than a promise broken. It erodes belief that leaders even care. When leaders turn away, the people turn inward, losing faith not just in individuals, but in the very idea of leadership. The French Revolution began not with defiance, but with silence, when words lost their meaning. The quiet withdrawal of trust was the first step toward upheaval. By the time the king noticed, the crowd had already turned away. The halls of power echoed with absence, and the distance between ruler and ruled became insurmountable. This story is not unique to France. Across history, leaders rise on promises but fall when those promises fade. The cycle repeats in every era, in every nation, wherever words are not matched by deeds. Trust is lost in 1,000 missed moments. It slips away quietly, almost imperceptibly, until one day it is gone entirely. Leaders who forget the weight of their words soon find themselves speaking to empty rooms. The applause fades. The crowds disperse, and only echoes remain. The promise gap is the first crack in the foundation of trust. Once it appears, it spreads, quietly, relentlessly, until the entire structure threatens to collapse. Leaders often begin close to the people, walking among them, listening to their hopes and fears, and drawing strength from the energy of the crowd. In the early days, their authority is rooted in these connections, in the trust and understanding built face to face. But as power grows, so does the distance. the halls become grander, the offices more imposing, and the leader's world slowly shifts from the streets to the corridors of power. The trappings of leadership become walls, separating rulers from reality. The rituals and routines of office, meant to serve the people, can instead become barriers that keep them out. Tsar Nicholas II of Russia inherited privilege, but as years passed, the world outside his palace became an abstraction. Letters replaced conversations, ceremonies masked unrest. The voices of ordinary Russians faded behind layers of protocol and tradition. In the Winter Palace, he was shielded from dissent, surrounded by those who told him what he wished to hear. Advisors filtered the truth, presenting only what was safe, never what was urgent or uncomfortable. The suffering of millions became rumors, not realities. Distance breeds ignorance. The pain of the people was reduced to numbers in reports, or whispers in the halls, never a living presence. When leaders lose touch, their decisions become erratic. Uncertainty grows, and choices are made in isolation, without the grounding of real voices or honest feedback. The Russian Revolution seeped through cracks in the Tsar's awareness, gathering strength with every ignored plea. The unrest outside grew louder, but inside the palace, it was muffled by denial and distance. By the time the distance was unbridgeable, the people saw the Tsar as a stranger. The bond that once united ruler and ruled had snapped, replaced by suspicion and anger. This isn't unique to monarchies. The distance disconnect can happen anywhere, in any system, to any leader who forgets the source of their legitimacy. In democracies, leaders can become just as remote. Security barriers, motorcades, and layers of bureaucracy can insulate them from the very people they serve. The more distant the leader, the weaker the bond of trust. When citizens feel unheard, cynicism grows, and the foundation of democracy is shaken. A leader's strength lies in connection, not isolation. True leadership means listening, engaging, and remaining open to criticism and change. When leaders retreat behind walls, those walls become their own prisons. The isolation that once felt like protection becomes a trap, cutting them off from the pulse of the nation. Distance disconnects, and once the crowd stops listening, it's almost impossible to draw them near again. The lesson is clear. Leadership demands presence, humility, and the courage to stay close no matter how high the office. Corruption isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always arrive with headlines or public outrage. More often it creeps in quietly, woven into the fabric of daily life, almost invisible to those who benefit from it. The most insidious form is the quiet daily accumulation of small corruptions, tiny favors, overlooked rules, and minor abuses of power that over time become routine. These acts rarely make the news, but their impact is profound. Each act may seem trivial, almost harmless in isolation. But together, they erode trust more completely than any single scandal. Like termites in a wooden beam, they hollow out the structure from within, leaving only a fragile shell. The East India Company began as a trading venture, seeking profit and opportunity. But over decades, as power grew, the lines between business, governance, and personal gain blurred until they were almost indistinguishable. Officials accepted gifts, then bribes, then outright stole from those they ruled. What started as tokens of appreciation soon became expectations, and then demands. The boundaries of acceptable behavior shifted, inch by inch. Each time, the justification was simple. Everyone did it. Exceptions became the rule, and what was once shocking became ordinary. Rationalizations filled diaries and letters. It's just how things are done. Taxes manipulated, justice sold, governance hollowed out. The machinery of administration became a tool for personal enrichment, not public service. Small corruptions are rarely punished, but each leaves a mark, on documents, on reputations, and on the collective memory of a society. Complaints pile up, ignored, and forgotten. Trust seeps away, drip by drip, until the reservoir is dry. What once seemed unbreakable, the bond between ruler and ruled, or citizen and state, becomes brittle and empty. The normalization of corruption is a slow poison. It spreads quietly, infecting every level of society until the very idea of honesty seems naive. When those in power look the other way, the message is clear. Rules are for others. Accountability fades, and cynicism takes root. The result is a system that cannot correct itself, because the rot is everywhere. Institutions that once stood for justice and order become relics, overtaken by decay. The East India Company's rule ended not with a single scandal, but with a loss of legitimacy so profound that even its most loyal backers abandoned it. The collapse was inevitable, the trust irreparably broken. The normalization of small corruptions is the slow undoing of trust, a process so gradual, it's often noticed only when it's far too late to repair. Every society builds guardrails, rules, and institutions to keep power in check. When leaders respect these boundaries, society flourishes. When they abuse them, the foundation cracks. Watergate was not just a crime, but a systematic effort to use institutions for personal gain. The White House became the stage for deception. Laws were circumvented, agencies manipulated. At first, the public hoped the system would correct itself. But as revelations mounted, doubt replaced confidence. The abuse of guardrails is not just about a crime, it's about realizing the rules might not matter at all. When structures meant to protect the people are twisted to protect the powerful, cynicism spreads. After Watergate, every institution was viewed through a skeptical lens. The abuse of guardrails undermines not just a leader, but the very idea of leadership. Wherever leaders use power for personal ends, legitimacy collapses. The rules once bent are not easily straightened. Guardrails exist for a reason. When they fall, trust falls with them. The path back is long and strewn with doubt. Truth is the invisible thread that binds leaders to the lead. When it frays, trust unravels. Leaders who manipulate or deny the truth may win short-term gains, but lose long-term legitimacy. The truth deficit begins with small lies, but soon expands to every facet of leadership. In an age of instant communication, the truth deficit spreads faster than ever. When the public senses leaders aren't telling the whole story, skepticism takes root. Each new statement is weighed against a growing record of past deceptions. The benefit of the doubt disappears. When disasters strike, the public looks for honesty. If the response is evasive, faith crumbles. Restoring trust after a truth deficit is among the hardest tasks. Only radical transparency and a commitment to reality can rebuild the bond that's been broken. Today, these patterns move faster. Trust can collapse in months, not decades. Technology accelerates exposure, but the pattern remains. Trust is fragile like water. It drains slowly through cracks, promises ignored, truths hidden, distance created. When the last drop disappears, leaders always look surprised, as if trust was a right, not a result. Watch the patterns. Watch the promises. Watch the distance. Watch the rules. Watch the truth. Trust does not die in a single headline. It dies in the silence between what leaders say and what they do. History shows that silence never stays quiet forever. The lessons of the past are invitations to vigilance. Each generation must decide whether to accept the slow erosion of faith or demand something better. Trust is earned, not owed, and the silence of broken faith is a call to listen, to question, and to expect more from those who lead us.